Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mild's Culture Plate, Saturday, January 14th, 2023. And today we have, oh my God, a nightmare of a show for you folks. I'm going to be dipping my toe. This may be a two-part segment here. I may do a little bit today and a little bit in a future stream, perhaps Wednesday or next Saturday. But we're going to be dipping our toe into this new vice masculinity debate. So we covered the vice femininity debate a couple weeks back that had Sydney Watson and Pearlie and transgender activists and feminists, and oh my lord, it was a nightmare. This is fucking worse. This is fucking worse. Anyway, so to start off the show, headlines. I'm just gonna spit shit out. Joe Biden hiding classified documents. Not really gonna get into that. Not gonna cover that today. You got female police officers blowing their colleagues and their cuckold husbands. Give no fucks. He's gonna stay with her. I mean, all you gotta do, these stories are everywhere. So I'm not getting into them because, quite frankly, everyone's covering the female police officer who's been banging her colleagues, and everyone's covering Joe Biden hiding the documents in his car, in his garage, in his son's house. You know, shit's fucked up. Shit's fucked up. I have no whiskey today. I'm going to kind of lay back on the whiskey because I may need to be driving later. If I was drinking whiskey, it would probably be Highland Park 12. So be on the lookout for that on the Wednesday show this week. Excuse me. I did just eat lunch, so I'm a little indigested. Anyway, so today we're going to be covering the vice masculinity debate. Another thing I wanted to kind of open up the show with a little bit is a discussion on relationships. And that is, my philosophy. There's been some question in some of the group chats I'm a part of and some of the communities I'm in, what's possible in a relationship and what is my philosophy on relationships. And I just want to throw a few things out there, just a few simple philosophies that I tend to follow that cover my outlook on why so many relationships, so many people's expectations and what they want to find for a long-term committed love, passion, whatever, why they can't seem to find what the fuck they're looking for. And, I definitely want to throw out a disclaimer. My life isn't necessarily the perfect situation. I believe I had the perfect situation at one point in time, but people are fickle. People change. People adapt. People develop different motivations, different wants, different passions, and, people change. And that's cool. So I'm going to start with the basics. Number one, fucking vigilant honesty. You get all these motherfuckers, they get into relationships and they get nervous or they worry about what they're portraying. Look, I'm not saying spill your guts and your whole fucking medical history to some chick you just met, but be fucking honest, Don't make it seem like you're trying to develop a secure, permanent relationship if you're just trying to hit it and quit it. There are plenty of women, plenty of hot women, plenty of and hot dudes for that matter. This is gender non-conforming advice here. So men and women, but I speak to men because I'm a man and these are my experiences. There are women who either are recently divorced or, they're not looking to get tied down and married. Go find those women. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. So you have no reason to lie. And half the time, if you are lying, you're lying to yourself in the long run. You know, you're lying to yourself about what kind of expectations you really have. Because here's something I found about women. There are some of those women who say they're looking for a casual relationship. But there's always a fucking tell, especially I fucking hate dating sites, but if you look on fucking dating sites, there's always a tell, right? They're always, you know, looking for casual, but then down in the guts of the paragraph, you know, there's always something about the one, or find the Romeo to my Juliet, or something stupid like that. Hold on real quick. We've got some NFL football going on in other areas of the house, and it's very loud. So let me close my vault door real quick. Not sure if you could hear the percussion of the sound bar in the other room, but I just wanted to make sure we've got a clean show here. Okay, so first off, yeah, vigilant honesty. There's no fucking reason to lie. Second thing is, whatever you think you know about relationships, going into dating a new person, if what you're looking for is a committed partner, let me throw that disclaimer. If what you're looking for is a committed partner, throw everything you fucking know out the window. I don't care if you've been married 3 times. I don't care if you've had 3 decade-long relationships. Everything you know about relationships means absolutely jack shit when you enter into a new relationship with a new person. And kind of what I mean by that is what a commitment looks like to one person, and all the kind of rules that surround it. All these weird rules of monogamy, you know, about whether or not you should be texting or whether or not you should be, you know, sharing risque photos with one another or whatever. You know, that's going to change from person to person. And so starting out, if you're trying to kind of take the proper steps and take things slow but committed, everyone's going to have their little boundaries, their little, I don't want this relationship to feel too domestic too quick. And so those little steps, those little, you know, I don't necessarily want you to meet my kids right away. Those things are going to be different from person to person. So kind of chuck everything you may think about that stuff out of the window. And then the third major piece of advice about relationships. And I'm going to move on to the vice masculinity thing here in a minute because I don't want to hound on this subject too much. But, you know, again, I have been asked in some of the communities I've run in what my opinion of relationships are, and that's why I'm doing this. But my third big piece of advice is this. A lot of people focus on what they call soulmates or the one. I don't believe in the one. I mean, look, I know I don't believe in the one. Let's just leave it at that. I don't believe in the one, and here's why I don't believe in the one. Because I think there are 3 major traits that we look for in the perfect partner. I think a relationship involves really 3 relationships. And you know, I do this with a lot of philosophical topics. I break it down and really look at it as parts and pieces of a puzzle that you have to kind of put together and analyze it as a whole word. But I think committed relationships, you're looking for 3 things. You're looking for a best friend. So let's say you're into superhero movies. Sure, you may be able to get into a relationship with someone who only watches fucking rom-coms. But if you're always watching superhero movies and they're always watching rom-coms, or you never come together on the same page with hobbies and interests, chances are it's not going to be as fulfilling of a relationship as 2 people who kind of share the same passions, right? So speaking of passion, okay, so number one is your best friend. Number two is your passionate lover. There's a certain chemistry that gets activated when you are clicking really hot with a passionate lover. And I'm not saying dead bedrooms aren't possible in those relationships, especially if they last several years. You know, the passion, the new relationship energy can wear off and come back and wear off and come back. But there's a certain passion that you feel with some partners, and you could have the same sexual energy and the same sexuality and even the same sexual acts with a different partner, but for some reason, just, I don't know if it's the pheromones involved or something, but there's just a different compatibility, right? There's some people who you like, you when you're spooning, you just fit right in the cuddle. You know, they're just warm, you know, you hug them and it's just right. And it, so you got this just animalistic connection, this, like I said, I don't know if it's pheromones or what it is, but you have just this passionate fucking being on the same page, almost to where you both climax at the same time, you're both interested in the same sexual activities, and it's just, you're there, right? So you got best friend, passionate lover, and then lastly, and again, this is strictly for committed relationships. Lastly, you have a compatible future goal family outlook. And I don't know what necessarily to call that other than, you know, the husband wife connection, right? So you want kids, she wants kids. You want to homeschool, she wants to homeschool. You want to go to church, she wants to go to church. You know, you want a certain retirement. You agree on what chores which partner should perform in the home. You agree on how much money should be saved back versus how much can be spent on entertainment. You know, these little nitpicky things that we fight about as adults in a relationship, you know, depending on how compatible you are on those things, are that third wing of a committed long-term relationship. And so here's the thing. So when I say I don't believe in soulmates, I don't believe in the one. I don't believe that all. So if you look at those three things like Madden stats, right? Like stats in a video game. Like, it's very hard to get 100% on all three of those traits with another person. 100% compatibility on all three of those traits, it's fucking rare. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It happens for a lot of people in this country. But chances are you and the person who you've been sleeping with in that bed, I think you kind of know that one of those is down to like 70, another one may be down to like 50. You know, this is why, in my opinion, there are challenges to things like polygamy and polyamory and stuff like that, but I don't discount those people because I think that's just a supplement for the other 30% of the other thing, you know, and if you can manage things like jealousy and control and communication with your partners and be open and honest, back to the vigilant honesty, I think anything could be possible. You know, I'm in love with one person very deeply. I've loved other people in the past. I've had committed relationships, but ultimately, if you follow that vigilant honesty, you know, and that's just like a court. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You can't hold, if you're being vigilantly honest about where you were on Friday night, you can't leave out the fact that you stopped by your friend's brother's house to go to the bathroom. You know, I believe in vigilant honesty. Yeah, there are some things maybe you don't want to disclose, but, you know, then you have to ask yourself, well, how committed am I to this person? It is what it is. Anyway, so let's move on. Let's move on to fucking masculinity. You know, and let me start off with a disclaimer. I would never claim to be a fucking alpha male. I would never claim to be the face of fucking masculinity, but dear Lord, whatever the hell is going on with these dudes in this Vice video, I'm not sure I want to know. Let me see if I can get my window sized right. Holy crap. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so we're going to skip around in this a little bit. First, I want to play their introductions because I think their introductions are really telling, because this guy kind of asks them to define masculinity in their terms. And I want you to fucking listen, because none of them, not a single one of these 9 motherfuckers seem to actually have a fucking answer.
And talking through masculinity, what it means to be a man, etc. Obviously, we couldn't fit every man in the country into this room. We tried to get a diverse perspective, but of course, that caveat, we're not everyone. I wanted to start by telling you why this is something that I'm interested in. I have an 8-year-old son, and I'm seeing him absorb what manliness might mean. I'm thinking to myself, what does it mean to be a man? To start, maybe we could just introduce each other to each other. And if you were to describe what it means to be a man or to be masculine.
My name is Tahoe. I'm a black man from the hood. When I was young, being a man, you had to be tough. You had to be hard. And now, to me, being a man is a lot different. Now, to me, being a man is knowing when to be soft. Knowing that you don't always have to run the charge. You can actually listen. You know what I mean? So things have changed a lot over the course of the years for me.
I'm Griff.
Okay, so let's start off. I don't have a problem with what he said. There's a little bit knowing when to be soft. Depending on how you look at that, I can agree with that. Learn when not to be soft. I think that's almost the important part of that. Don't learn when to be hard. Learn when not to be soft. Sure, I could somewhat agree with where he's going with this. He says some shit later, and again, I haven't watched this whole thing yet. I've watched some chunks because I've skipped around because I literally just found this 45 minutes ago, and it's a 45-minute clip, and I had to get ready for the show. But I couldn't believe some of the shit I was hearing when I was clicking around on this, so I had to cover it today. And like I said, we may be covering even more of this on a future show.
And I don't identify as a man.
Imagine that.
I still have elements of, my identity that are masculine elements.
So let me fucking, okay. The Vice Femininity panel, the feminism panel, a couple weeks ago. Everyone identified as a woman. Everyone identified as a woman. Even the transgenders identified as a woman. They get the masculinity panel, and you have someone who doesn't identify as a man. Already fucking bullshit. Bullshit. Your debate. Bullshit.
That are feminine elements that don't fall within that range. And I personally just don't feel tied to the norms or the confines of gender at all.
Well, welcome.
My name is Dylan, and I think that the notion of masculinity is just something that can be possessed by man or woman. Man, woman, non-gender conforming person. What it means to be masculine is just changing and very fluid. But I think that, masculinity is something that just, you embody based off of just how you show up in this world as a man and just how you go about being your day-to-day.
Did you hear an answer there? Did you hear a definition there? It's changing, and it's how you go day to day. Not a fucking answer. Not a fucking answer. The person before, the transgender or the non-binary person, not a fucking answer. So far we have I thought it was this, but now it's this. Or I thought it was being hard, but now it's knowing when to be soft, which halfway valid. And now we've got 2 non-answers. Let's continue.
How you show up. Interesting.
Yes.
What's up, guys? My name is Paul. I'm a fitness entrepreneur. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 4 years old with my family. It's kind of funny how we're talking about it. My take on masculinity is not about talking as much as doing. I think at its core, a man has to be efficient, competent, and be willing to do what it takes for themselves and their loved ones.
Okay. I could respect that definition, but do what exactly? Be efficient, confident, and do what it takes. Okay, I could get behind that.
I was not always a good man. I was not always what you would call a healthy masculine man. And so as my life has changed, I've identified 5 points that I think make a truly masculine man masculine.
Here we go.
I think point number 1 is a man who walks with God. Point number 2 is a man who stands on principle. Point number 3, which is a masculine man, is self-sacrificing. So someone who is willing to sacrifice for point 4, the people that he leads. A true man is a leader. And number 5, a masculine man is never a coward.
So, one thing I find unfortunate, I've kind of, like I said, scrolled through this. Mr. Cowboy Hat there isn't represented very much in this video. But even so, he's talking about being a man of God, being a sacrifice. Sure. But are those positive traits? And they'll get into positive and negative and toxic masculinity and stuff later, but we'll see.
That's a lot there.
Yeah.
Let's get into that as we go on.
I think what it means to be a man is responsibility. As a man, it can come with a lot of power, and with great power comes great responsibility. In short words. That's it.
That's from Spider-Man, I think.
Yeah.
Uncle Ben.
Called out. Called out. You think nobody's going to recognize one of the most popular movies ever? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing, bro?
James.
Well, my name is James Killen, former United States Marine turned Air Force officer. Got a couple combat tours, but I'm also a father of 3 girls who mellowed me out. The idea of
neutered. I've been neutered.
Masculinity is something that I find interesting because it is changing, and I can actually see those changes in myself. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this panel.
Thanks for your service.
Again, did you hear a definition? So far, the only definitions I've heard are a half definition and Mr. Cowboy Hat giving his 5 points of ideal masculinity. And then a Spider-Man quote. And 2 people, now 3 people who've said it's just changing.
Andre.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, men.
Woo! Okay, come on.
I think my idea of a real man is, someone that gets the job done, and provides and all that. I don't even know what that means anymore, but I don't know. It's changing every day.
How do you think it's changing?
No, it just seems like everything is changing every day. It's like a new world order, so I don't...
NWO.
I have a hard time keeping up with stuff, so I feel like tomorrow it's going to be something else, and people are going to comment and be like, you're wrong, it's this now.
It is hard to talk about some of this stuff because you feel like you might say the wrong thing.
I'm not really masculine myself, so I feel like I'm like the wrong person to ask.
He's the wrong person. Dude, I respect his fucking answer the most out of any of these guys. Because he's like, dude, if I say it, they're going to fucking cancel me. And look, it's just provide, like be a man. He literally is the most honest with himself. He's not trying to bullshit anyone. He's not trying to be like, oh, it's this crazy, ever adapting fucking mutant of a concept. And he's not trying to fucking quote cliches in fucking movies. He's being fucking honest from the heart. And then he says, well, I don't know. I don't see myself as masculine, so I'm the wrong person to answer. Man, it's fucked up.
Maybe the right person to ask. Christian.
What it means to be a man is to be a adult human male.
That's sort of a very formal definition, but I think that might be a good place to kick off because there's a lot.
Okay, so he gave the fucking basic definition of being a man, but again, he didn't He didn't go there with the masculinity. I respect his answer. I love his answer on what it takes to be a man, adult human male. You notice that kind of language would anger the transgender community a little bit. I can kind of respect that he wasn't afraid to go there. But then he didn't talk about masculine man or masculinity. So let's...
Of talk, of writing, of research these days that says there's a crisis in masculinity. Is there a crisis in masculinity? And if so, like, what is that crisis?
The thing that I see is a lot of deconstructing generational trauma. The be a man, boys don't cry, this, that, and the other thing. I think that's actually one of the reasons why we see it as a crisis, because we're actually trying to redefine what it means to be a man, and none of us have any idea because we're just out here trying to be whoever we are.
That's right.
This dude, I'm fucking calling it. This dude gets lectured weekly. Mr. Ginger fucking in the back there. Like, you can't see him here. Here, let's go. This dude gets lectured weekly by his wife and daughters on how to be a positive male role model, male feminist, ally fucking person. He gets lectured fucking on the weekly. Guaranteed.
Idea, because we're...
Being a man was rooted in patriarchy and misogyny. And now...
And now he's got the feminist talking points.
We realize how harmful that has been over the years. And so we don't really know how to define where we're supposed to be. And I think the reason, as they're saying, there's a crisis is because the box has gotten so small for just being, say, straight, just being a hetero, right? Because if you do anything, women judge you.
What do you mean anything?
If I dance a certain way, or if I wear my hair a certain way, if I dress a certain way, they go, real men don't do that. Real men don't do that.
Real men don't give a shit. Like, that. This is the fucked up part. Like, I'm not necessarily calling Prince or David Bowie fucking masculine men, but on the same token, like, you get rich, you get famous, you get bitches, you put yourself out there in the world, and the world either accepts you or they don't. And, a confident man, a man confident in his own skin and in his own shoes and in his own style, give no fucks about the haters. They give no fucks about the haters. So this guy has given way too many fucks about what the haters say. And so now he's in this crisis of, well, who do I be that I'm not going to be toxic, but I'm also not going to be seen as gay or effeminate or non-masculine? Bro, you just need confidence. And granted, I'm not saying that as a super confident person myself. I'm actually pretty fucking shy. I actually don't even, like, this show is my fucking big outlet to try to fucking cure my shyness. And, look, I'm not some social fucking awesome person, but come on, you got to be a little more confident than that, bro.
And so you get scared to move a certain way because you don't want to get judged or outed out of the accepted part of your community. And I think that kind of has us in an uproar, and we don't know where to be. Like, where's the safe place to be for men now?
Men don't look for safe places. I mean, men look for relative safety, and men look for ways to shore up and fortify their life. But men don't hunt for existing safety because it's an illusion.
What I mean, and it's kind of disturbing.
I was what you would call a toxic masculine male growing up.
Okay, so now we get to see Mr. Cowboy Hat again. And again, like I said, he's not in this video much, so I'm interested to hear what he has to say here.
And I had good men that sewed into me. They gave me good advice, but I never found manhood or never understood my place as a man until one day I humbled myself and I gave my life to the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm telling you right now, walking with God changed my life forever.
The answer to every question is not Jesus Christ. I have a lot of respect for Christianity, Christian faith, and other faiths, and they're walking with God in the ways, and they're walking with their creator, depending on how you view religion, how you view whatever. Whether you meditate, whatever you do to speak with your greater universe and your creation, and I kind of took the piss out of it my last show with my numerology and astrology jokes, but seriously, I do have respect for people who are in tune with the universe and asking their God, their faith, whatever, for answers. But if you're trying to define what your own identity is, like, yes, ask your faith what you should do, but there has to be a way to tangibly explain that to another person other than just trust God.
That's what changed
Can you
me.
define toxic masculinity? Like,
I would say toxic masculinity is like what he was just saying, where you're using that leadership role or that aggressive nature in a harmful way to harm other people, to get your way. So the biblical structure for manhood is very humble. It's self-sacrifice. It's not self-motivated, but it is motivated by principle and standing on what's right. So there is a clear-cut vision for manhood in the Bible that I live by, and I think our culture used to live by, and I think our culture has lost its way.
Okay, but again, I think that's beyond biblical, right? For one. And for two, I think it's less about self-sacrifice and leadership, so to speak, as he's saying, and more to do with what I was saying earlier about confidence. And look, if your masculinity involves other people, like this is to me the misnomer here. I think every adult human person should try to get comfortable within their own skin. Once you're comfortable within your own skin, then yes, you could be a leader of sorts, but you're not a leader. You're a mentor. You're a guide. You're not a leader. You're a teacher. And I don't know what this guy gets out of the Bible that tells him he needs to lead. You don't lead, you teach. You guide. And you participate.
I think everybody sort of has a different definition of toxic masculinity. I don't find masculinity toxic in and of it.
Oh yeah, this is the other thing. Yeah, this idea that toxic masculinity is using masculinity for your own gain. No, I think there's a fine line between using it for your own gain and using it in a predatory fashion against others. Like that to me is the line. You can gain whatever you want. I'm a capitalist. I believe you're making money isn't stealing from someone else if everything's voluntary and good, and there's no fine print that's screwing somebody else. If someone's getting value from you and you're getting profit from them, and I think the same thing about masculinity. If you're I give for value and receive for value, like the Darrell Brooks trial. Anyway,
itself, but I do believe in bad men, and bad men exist. But does that mean every man is toxically masculine? No.
When you're talking about a crisis on masculinity, I think that there's a lack of understanding there. So it's like masculinity, being masculine isn't toxic. It's just like there are portions of it that you can dive into that make it toxic.
Because I think a lot of what we...
Okay. But you take the good, you take the bad, you take the both, there you have the facts of life, right? Like, there isn't anything that's 100% good and 100% bad. I just talked about capitalism. Yes, there are some negative side effects of capitalism. There are negative side effects of socialism. If you want to act like you got this perfect doctrine or this perfect aspect of life that never has anything fucking negative or toxic, I think the question is, why does this exist? And this is why, sometimes I listen to Jordan Peterson on this, because he talks about the hierarchies, right? He talks about the male being the traditional protector and having to go into these fields where they're in these hierarchical battles with other men, and that they're just built that way, right? And one of the most profound things I think Jordan Peterson has ever said is that a good partner, a good man, that when women are looking for a man, they should not look for a weak man. They should look for a monster who can contain the monster. It's so profound. You have to have the capability to be a violent, toxic, hateful, conniving, strategic mind and strong body, but with the patience and understanding and caring and empathy to control those notions in a civilized manner with other people.
I think of masculinity is tied into patriarchy, right? Which is to say, like, for the longest period of human history, like, men dominated women and got the lion's share of stuff.
I think a lot of times.
Bro! Nope. Dominated women? This is what is frustrating because I see, look, I've been a libertarian, right? So I see this pendulum swing of conservatism and liberalism, and I see the free love people. I've seen people type out entire theories in BDSM communities where they talk about topping from the bottom. And while it may look like that dominant is an aggressive monster, right? Like, yeah, the choking, the spanking. It's the bottom who's got the bratty behavior, who's manipulating the dom into punishing her. I'm not saying that all of the gender differences throughout human history are women controlling from a submissive position. I'm not going there. But the idea that women haven't been part of the conversation on what families look like, on what gender relations in society look like throughout history, that women have had no power, that women haven't been a part of building what we have. Honestly, I think that's sexist toward women. This idea that women haven't had any kind of rights until recently. They haven't had complete autonomy, which is what rights are based on. But the idea that they haven't had a voice, that they haven't had the ability to manipulate men into speaking on their behalf. There's a lot of power in that.
Some people make masculinity into a caricature, like it has to be this alpha bro tough guy.
Exactly.
And I find the low-key guy who, is a really great father and a great husband and maybe not like drinking raw eggs every day to be a lot more masculine than the alpha bro who's going and like banging 20 women per weekend and not a responsible man. I find it more masculine to be a good guy.
I think that
I actually respect that guy's take. That was just on there. Being a good father's part of it. There are definitely role models. I don't want to even say role models. There are definitely men who can walk the walk and speak the game, who are also able to separate that and be a good father and talk to their daughters about the realities of the world around them. I don't know. We'll see.
the background of this is that we are saying that gender is this like real thing that has real ideas and implications. And Griffin, I'm wondering, as someone who identifies as non-binary, how does this conversation strike you?
Well, I think that it kind of becomes like irrelevant whether or not we attribute like having like a good ethical compass to being like masculine. Attributing that to like the gender.
As always, the alphabet soup person completely fucking misses the point. Nobody's drawing a parallel. Nobody's creating a one-to-one relation between gender and goodness. Nobody's fucking done that. They're trying to figure out how to make those two things compatible. That's a lot fucking more important in life. But all you want to hear is how this affects whatever identity you've constructed in your fucking head.
There are constructs which we have made up, which are like somewhat pointless, like kind of just feed into needless roles that.
Projection. Confession through projection. Roles that are made up. Created in our head. Hierarchies are a thing. Your interaction with society is a thing. And your willingness to operate outside those parameters as a non-binary person, you have the freedom to do that. But let's not act like it's the rest of society who's got a mental problem. That it's the rest of society who's playing make-believe.
That uphold the patriarchy without even knowing it. A lot of those things are just things that people should be doing because they're like morally right. Like if you're in a family, you should probably support your family. And I really don't think that it has to do with like your manhood.
These characters.
It doesn't have to do with manhood. It has to do with being a good man. It has to do with being a masculine man. It has to do with being a fucking adult. Because look, there are people my age, 42 years old, who play video games and do drugs all day. Who have kids being raised by stepdaddy and mommy. And daddy gives no shits. Daddy wants his drugs and his video game, and he gives no shits. He's not an adult. He should be paying child support. He'll go to jail for 30 days. Then they'll kick him back out of jail because the fucking jails are overcrowded and they don't need a bunch of fucking child support deadbeats in there. So they kick him back on the street, tell him to get a job. He may do some work under the table for a while for a little cash so that they don't confiscate his check and give it to his baby mama. But he's not being responsible. He's not being an adult. He's not being a man. And when I say he, I could be talking about women, non-binary people. It doesn't matter. It's about being an adult, taking care of business, and accepting responsibility for what you've created.
Characteristics that we're talking about are baked into an old system of domestic life.
I think that's actually where we get toxic masculinity. Like, none of us can really describe what it is, but we can see it when it happens.
So we learn it, right?
Yeah.
This is something we learn from the world. It's something we learn from, like, TV.
But again, this idea that toxicity and masculinity are somehow... Look, let's be honest. It's what they're talking about is predatory behavior. Predatory behavior. And it doesn't have to be manly. It doesn't have to be masculine. Women do this shit too. Non-binary people do this shit too. If you think predatory behavior is only a male aggressive centered thing, look, there are a lot of circles out there on YouTube and other communities that talk about feminism, talk about the realities of gender interaction, and they bring up a concept known as the Duluth model of power and control. And I want my viewers to know that this is the biggest crock of bullshit on the planet. It's the idea that it's a masculine trait to want to exert dominance and control. That if there's an issue of abuse, that it's going to be coming inherently from a man in a relationship. And it's bullshit. It's the biggest crock of shit in our country, but the ideas behind it, the theories behind it, the understandings behind it, the old gender conforming ways that they're complaining about has built up this fucking narrative. And that's the underlying principle behind everyone's theory on toxic masculinity. And I call bullshit. I call bullshit. Predatory, abusive behavior is not a gendered thing.
And shit, and it's maybe something we learned from our dads, too. Tell me about your dad.
I'm a first-generation kid. My dad is from Guyana. Grew up in very humble beginnings, poor family. First time I remember my dad telling me he loved me was when I was 17. And he was like saying like he was proud of me because I was about to graduate high school and things like that, you know. I'm appreciative of all the other things, you know, being present as a provider, but in terms of like, you know, the conversation piece and like, oh, I want to talk to my dad about, you know, sex or something, or I want to talk to my dad about, oh, this person broke up with me and I'm feeling pretty sad about it. I didn't have those conversations.
So like emotional language.
I had those conversations with my son. He didn't appreciate them. You know, our generation is taught, well, I mean, I think every generation really, to some degree, teaches kids to be rebellious against what their parents think is a positive role model situation, you know, whether it be Bible thumpers and then their kids go the opposite way and become atheists or whatever, you know. This idea that he's got a problem with his father being stoic and non-emotional, when I was very emotional with my son, and even the little bit of time I got to spend with my daughter, I tried to express emotion and positive masculinity to her, but strictly to my son. My son came to me for advice a couple times. He listened to my advice, but then he dismissed it as, well, toxic masculinity, when I simply was trying to teach him that the world is a cruel place sometimes. Fair enough. But just to kind of counter this guy's point, maybe the right way is to be stoic and let your children, let your sons learn how to be stoic on their own. Let your sons learn that vulnerability. Now, really, this is the conversation they're about to have here, is vulnerability. Vulnerability can be a strength in the right context, but most of the time it's a weakness that your enemies and even sometimes your loved ones will use as a weapon against you.
As part of like how you talk to your dad.
Yeah.
And my definition of manhood came solely from my relationship with God. It didn't come from my father. It didn't come from the good influences around me.
Is God a man?
Yeah, and God is a man.
He is.
So here we go. We got the most masculine dude here, and the only thing he fucking has said through this whole thing is God, God, God. God, God, God.
And God is a father, and he's a good father. He's a perfect father. And so I think there is a clear definition of manhood where I guess that's where I diverge from everyone else in the room. I believe man.
In fact, let me take that back. I think the most masculine one of these dudes is the guy in the black shirt in front. And he's the softest looking dude and has maybe one of the softest voices on the panel. But so far he has the most based take on masculinity so far. Because this guy and his everything's based on my relationship with God. But then he says be a leader. Well, if you don't take responsibility for your relationship as that leader, no, it's what God told me to do. You're putting the blame on him.
Manhood is clearly defined by God. It is the perfect example of what a man should be.
Christian, I see you nodding your head.
I grew up in a divorced home. When you do grow up in a broken home and you don't have a father in the home, you recognize how important sort of both males and females are in raising a child and being in the home.
There's a balance between, masculine energy and feminine energy.
Absolutely.
And I feel like there's both within everybody. And so there's a balance that with masculine energy in itself that I think a lot of people have trouble trying to like reconcile within themselves. Like, yes, being a man, you work hard, you take care of your people, but you got to be able to have that emotional side too, which is where the feminine energy comes in.
Y'all just like triggered something in my head when y'all was speaking about.
hang on. Oh, God. Emotional energy. Okay, so, and later in this, they get into this whole our feminine, logic versus emotion, masculine versus feminine, in that context, like that masculinity is logical and femininity is emotional. And again, the idea that women can't be logical or men can't be emotional and still be masculine, it's bullshit. It's there's a time and a place for it. There is nothing more fucking masculine, right? Imagine you come home from war and you're at your bro's funeral. And you walk up to another man, you shed a tear, you give him a hug, and you remember your bro. That's fucking emotion. That's vulnerability, but that's vulnerability and emotion of the most masculine nature. Of your brotherhood, your unity. Your passion for another dude and another life. Money can't buy that, and feminism can't buy that. That's masculine emotional energy. There's a time and a place to cry, and that's one of them.
About having both in the home. To me, I didn't really have it there. And it made me feel a way, but I think that I always wanted one. And so I wound up at a certain age going outside and trying to find what masculinity was outside. And so I went on the corner, and there were 20 of us on the corner, and none of us had dads. We were all messed up, and so we all taught each other the wrong way to love, to be loved. And then I think in society, there's way more people like that.
And a lot of kids who don't have fathers in the home, excuse me,
No, you're good, man.
look for that father in the world or in a different way.
Sure. And he brought up a good point. This is a problem today with single motherhood, but, nobody wants to talk about the other part of that equation. That it's often the mothers who are taking the children from their fathers, having the government provide, having the community raise their child, instead of providing, instead of showing responsibility, it's an EBT card. And again, I'm not, this isn't a racist discussion. I'm talking about white chicks too. Kids need their fathers, or at the very least need a grandfather who understands.
Yeah.
Well, first, I think that attributing proper family values to a heterosexual couple with children is
Oh, here we fucking go. Here we go. This person is going to ignore the entire discussion about teaching kids about responsibility and healthy behavior. Let's be clear. That's the conversation that's happening right now, is teaching young male growing up responsibility and healthy behavior.
just not effective. I think that it's obviously a heteronormative take to be man and woman and then a child, and that's how you create a good family. And whether it's a single mother, single father, or a queer couple, I don't think that it's necessary to attribute men and women to certain roles in the household. I think that it's only due to nurture those gender norms that we follow.
Nurture. Well, okay, but how are you nurturing? How are you nurturing a young boy's ability to fight back against bullies if you have two people, or that child's live-in parenting unit has never faced anything like that before? How do you teach a young man about finding a rewarding career if that child's parenting unit has only known government assistance? It's not heteronormative. I don't care if you've got a mixture of parents or a single parent. The idea is you're able to see role models who are taking care of themselves, who are being a positive force in the world. And whatever your gendered bullshit, that's not the conversation that's happening right now. You're applying that. You're applying that based on what you're hearing around you. There are single women who are butch as fuck, who go to work, pay bills, single mothers who are butch as fuck, go to work, pay bills, and who are able to see the male side of life, and who might be able to teach some of those lessons to their sons. But again, this person thinks you should be in this non-gendered thing where masculinity doesn't exist, where femininity doesn't exist, where emotion and logic and responsibility and being a loser, like those aren't battles to have because everyone just goes to Starbucks at 8 a.m. and in a dress and, you know, nobody has any actual cares in the world. See, that's just it. They call it fucking cisgender privilege or what the fuck ever. But no, it's privilege to not have to worry about, does my child have a positive masculine role model in their life who can teach them about responsibility? If you're going through life and you never have to have that thought, that's a fucking privilege. And I'm sorry. You live in a fucking privileged world if your cares and worries and providing for yourself is, you know, if you're more worried about whether or not people see you in your identity than whether or not you're putting food on the table, whether or not your kid is being bullied and wants to commit suicide. But no, you think the only kids that shouldn't be bullied are ones that have interesting identities. But there are lots of reasons kids get bullied. Something to think about.
Female matters. God gives you one of those identities, you take on that role. And now you're responsible for not or for fulfilling that role. There's a masculine crisis because men are not taking responsibilities for the God-given roles that they have in society. And so when you take away the need to say, God made you this or God made you this, now you don't have to take responsibility for not fulfilling what you were called to do.
Okay, so now the Christian guy took the bait. Now he's a bigot and the other person's uncomfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, we're 12 minutes into this, and we're reaching the end of the show. I want to thank you for stopping by. If you can, come back next time. Participate in the chat. Talk to me. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover, or there's an interesting video you've seen that you think would be in the wheelhouse of this show, leave a comment below. You know, let me know what you'd like me to cover. I'll cover it. Quite that simple. I'm a people pleaser. I do what my audience asks. So yeah, I'm in the robe today. It's a Patriot Philosopher stream. Usually I got the lights a little lower for Patriot Philosopher, but because I was watching the video and it's kind of been a half and half show, you know, didn't want to necessarily do the whole stream in the dark. But really, people, just take care of yourselves. Just know your place in the world. I don't care if you're non-binary, like this person back there. But know what's expected of you to take care of yourself and to build a life. Know how to love other people. Know how to have some empathy. You know, that's just it. This person was probably so offended by what the Christian guy said, because he's never put him, you know, they've never put themselves in his shoes. I'm sure Cowboy Dude has enough rough things in life too, but instead he's going to be viewed as having, cisgender, straight, white, male, Christian privilege, whatever the fuck that means in 2023. So yeah, leave a comment below. Come back and chat this Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mild's Culture Plate. Give me a thumbs up below if you've liked this video. If you're watching on Rumble, which down in the description is links to Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, and Locals. So please subscribe or follow on those platforms. Share this video on other platforms. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. If you want to come back, if you want to know when my future streams are, or watch some of my future streams, hit the subscribe button and then hit that little bell that may notify you if you've got a smart device with a YouTube app on it. It might let you know when I'm going live in the future. So that's my show for today. Again, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for giving enough of a shit about philosophy and moving forward with a future that makes sense to watch this video. Take care of yourselves and each other. Don't get any on you. And if you do, rub that shit in real good. Thank you, everybody. Peace.